We are back with Dr. DrKelemen, and we just talked about the lung screening for cancers or any abnormality. And we talked to Micah about navigating the system and how all of this works. Now we've come to a point where we need an intervention or a therapy, and we've come to you. Can you talk to us a little bit about the lung, what we're looking for, and what are some of the treatment interventions?
Sure. So the lungs function, most people know, is to breathe in air and breathe out carbon dioxide. And so we want to keep the lungs functioning because you need that.
Are they fragile organs?
Relatively speaking.
Okay.
But you have a lot of reserve, a lot of functional reserve in your lungs. So we start with a general assessment of how you're feeling and your lung capacity, and then specifically we need to look at what cancer concerns do we have that have been brought up with the lung cancer screening.
Can I ask you what lung capacity means to the layperson?
Sure. You might describe it as fitness, like you get out of breath running around the block,
Okay.
Walking to your mailbox, walking up a flight of stairs, never.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things we want to know when we do some specific measures that put that in sort of medical numbers for us.
So once we have assessed that there is a cancer or something that needs surgery, what happens then?
Well, so the first step in assessing the cancer is we generally try to do a biopsy. And so most times now we can do that with a CT guided procedure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or a bronchial procedure where we put a scope down your mouth. So we try to get that. If we can't get it one of those two ways, then we do it in surgery with a camera scope. Is the third way we do it, but most of the time we're able to get it that way. And then the second thing we want to do is make sure that there's no spread outside of the lung. So we get what we call a CT PET scan to look for evidence of spread and do some other tests to say, okay, this is confined to the lungs.
Okay.
And we know what it is. And so is it a typical lung cancer? If it is, the next step is treatment. So early stage lung cancers that are confined to the lungs, we treat primarily with surgery.
Tissue is the issue.
Yes.
Take it out and, okay.
And so we take out part of the lung. We usually call the part of the lung we take out a lobectomy.
Okay.
The lung kind of looks like a loaf of bread. And on the right side it has 3 lobes, and on the left side it has 2. And we take out the lobe where the cancer is. Is the standard operation.
When someone has that done, does it impact the capacity, the lung capacity?
So it diminishes it, but most people have adequate reserve so that it doesn't affect them.
All right, next then. So we've taken that out, and typically if you excise it, if it's gone, what then is the protocol? Do you just do follow-ups, any other kind of treatment? Are you the physician? At that point, do they go back to internal medicine, cardiology?
So we continue to follow them.
Actually, pulmonology.
Yeah, we continue to follow them to make sure they don't have a recurrence or a problem. And oftentimes we do that in conjunction with pulmonology or oncology or sometimes primary care. But we stay involved for a while after that.
Can I ask you about lung cancer specifically and some of the causes? I know smoking is what we think about when we think of lung cancer, but is genetics a factor? Is age a factor? Is, if I'm a man or a woman, a factor?
So the biggest factor is clearly smoking. After that, the risks are low.
Okay.
There's other things that increase your risk of lung cancer. Radon is one of those. So that's one of the reasons houses are checked for radon when they sell them. And asbestos exposure would be another example. But primarily it's exposure to tobacco.
Is there an age demographic that people need to pay attention? I mean, would I be symptomatic?
So age is generally tied to length of exposure. So people who've smoked for a long time, if you smoke for 30 years, your risk of lung cancer is dramatically increased. And so generally to have smoked for 30 years, you're probably 50, 60 years old or more.
Okay, that makes sense. Other thoracic surgeries, what are other things that you actually do that are with interventions?
Oh, other than cancer
Sure.
surgeries. Well, so one thing that commonly happens is people get infections in their lungs. So like a complicated pneumonia that extends, involves a significant portion of lungs and involves infection around the lungs. So those can be difficult to clear with just antibiotics, and sometimes we have to clean out around the lungs, and it can form encasing fibrotic scar tissue on the lungs that makes them smaller, so we call that a decortication when we take out that material around there and allow the lungs to re-expand. So that happens in complex pneumonias. Sometimes people
Are people more prone to pneumonias? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as we get these brilliant ideas, we have to share them or we'll
Yes.
forget. But are people more prone? Because I know
Well,
they say over 65, pay attention.
Yes, I mean, I think certainly older people, more frail people, people with other illnesses, more prone.
When we go back and talk, and we're going to continue to talk about the disease process, but I had asked you once before, from a heart point of view, are there lifestyle things you can do for heart health? The same with lungs. Are there lifestyle things you can do for lung health?
Well, I think clearly smoking is the major issue.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And now vaping.
I was
has
just going to
obvious-
say, I wondered what you thought about with all the young folks vaping now. Are we going to see a resurgence of these kinds of...
Well, certainly it's not good for you. And the current problems we're seeing with people dying is very concerning. And so this is a new issue that's come out. But generally, breathing things in is not a good idea for your lungs.
So from a pulmonary point of view, what are other kinds of, you said the compound or the complex pneumonias or something that you really...
Well, so other things we see commonly are traumas. So sometimes someone may have a fall and break a rib, or a minor car accident, and that punctures the lung. We need to re-expand the lung, and sometimes there's major traumas that result in injury to the aorta, major arteries in the chest, heart, and those involve more complex surgeries.
And so often you're seeing not just the lung, but the lung and the heart also. From a lung point of view and a recovery point of view, are the lungs a resilient organ?
Oh, very much so.
Okay.
So we do the surgery, and so the surgery is really twofold. So we take out the cancer, and then we also stage the cancer. So we look for lymph nodes, evidence of spread, and then the next step after someone recovers from that, which they usually do pretty quickly.
Okay.
Most people are home from surgery in a few days.
Wow.
And then the next step is it more advanced or not? And if it is, then we move on to oncology and look to see if there's a need for chemotherapy or radiation.
Can I ask you about the team approach? Because I know you often have different fields and different modalities all working together. One of the things I've been impressed with the quality of care is really what you have here. And I think we actually were talking about it, to be honest with you, that when you came to the hospital, you were amazed at the caliber and quality of care and the services that are right here.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate to have a great team, not only in my department, but in pulmonology and oncology and radiation, so that we really cover the full spectrum of what we need for lung cancer care.
And even with your cardiology care too, we were talking about dedicated nurses and team members that you said were just, it's a pretty amazing thing to think in this community we have top notch.
Absolutely. So I was very excited to join such a dedicated team in the ICU. We have specific nurses for hearts, and same in the operating room. Our anesthesiologists, we have anesthesiologists that are dedicated just to doing heart surgery.
I mean, it's pretty impressive, and the more I learn, the more I know, and we've had the opportunity to go to the OR, it's really a testimonial to you and to your team, and also to the hospital here on Hilton Head, that we have this patient-centered quality of care. It's amazing. We want to thank you for joining us. It's always really fun, it's exciting, it's demystifying, and you're very articulate, so you make it user-friendly for many of the lay people who don't really know. So thank you, and we want to thank all of you for joining us here today on Healthy Living. Please have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.